What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. My name is Ryan Thomas, sports podcast host, sports writer, sports journalist, whatever you want to call me, from myfantasysportstalk.com. And I really appreciate you guys tuning in. The support has been unwavering. It's been fantastic. And I got to say, shout out to the females that have been tuning in to the show, that have been giving me feedback. I really appreciate it. I was one of the demographics that I was really trying to boost up. This is largely a male-dominated audience. And I'm like, man, what can I do to change that? Because, there's a lot of female writers, journalists, reporters that I respect. I think this is a great business that gives equal opportunity to everyone. And I think that has definitely happened within the last few years, especially, and it's great. Andrea Kramer, and Hannah Storm, I believe, will be doing their first Monday Night Football game as the first female tandem in broadcasting. I think that's pretty damn awesome. And to be honest, I feel like that couldn't have gone to two other ladies that were better than them. I feel like those are the two best ladies to take that spot, to have that honor. And shout out to that. I think that's great. So that's my little take on that, my little start to the show. I usually start my show with something random that really has nothing to do with the real subject matter of the show. That's just what I do. So there you have that. At the beginning, Thomas Take. This is the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I am covering Bellator MMA, Bellator 206 specifically, main card that takes place September 29th, Saturday night on DAZN or DAZN. I honestly don't know how to pronounce it, and I feel like that is not a good thing, but I feel like it's their own fault for not letting us know how to pronounce it, because I've heard top officials in Bellator say it wrong or not say it the way that it's supposed to be said. Scott Coker has botched it several times, and he's the Mac of Bellator. So I'm not really too hurt about it. But I've gone over the first two fights on the card. The main event, Gegard Mousasi, Rory McDonald, the first champion versus champion fight in Bellator history that has real substance to it. Joe Warren fought for a second belt a couple years back. He was the featherweight, lightweight champ of Bellator, the first champ of Bellator. Shout out to him. He does deserve the props because he was a really good fighter. At that time, Bellator just wasn't really big. And Bellator has grown. I've talked about that quite often on my show the last 2 years that I've had, 2-3 years that I've had the show, about Bellator's growth and some of the decisions that they've made to really make it better. And the main decision starts at the top when you bring in a guy like Scott Coker, who did such great things for Strikeforce, and that radiated over to the UFC. That really gave the UFC a prayer to put their hopes into. I mean, they gave them Ronda Rousey, they gave them Daniel Cormier, they gave them Luke Rockhold. Those are three fighters that the UFC made some money off of, especially Ronda. So, and Cormier, really, and Rockhold, all three of them they've made money off of, but Ronda, far outseeds the other two. But all that being said, Bellator is putting on this big event that I feel like definitely deserves justification and dignification. Is that a word? Needs to be dignified by the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. And that is Diego Lima versus Andrei Koreshkov. This is actually a rematch of their first fight. Lima won the first fight, which was a title fight. Or actually, did Lima win that first fight? That is a damn good question. Did I botch that? But in terms of the subject matter, Lima is a fighter that is just coming off a title loss, a real close title loss to Rory McDonald. And it was one of the best fights I've seen in recent memory. It really was. Just the way these guys just laid it all out there. They kicked ass, really. I mean, it was a fantastic fight. And it was all on free TV. I mean, it can't get much better than that. But this Douglas Lima, I said Diego, I botched that. My apologies to Douglas Lima. I thought Diego Lima. No, that's not it. It's Douglas Lima. Douglas Lima versus Andrei Koreshkov. I did spell Andrei's name like Andrei Arlovsky. Man, I botched that. My bad. This is the first fight that takes place in the Bellator Welterweight Grand Prix. Bellator has had great success with the Bellator Heavyweight Grand Prix. Now they move forward with Bellator's Welterweight Grand Prix. And as I look at the bracket here in front of me, this is the first matchup in the quarterfinals of the bracket. And let's lay out the bracket for the listeners. So Douglas Lima versus Andrei Koreshkov is the first fight. Neiman Gracie and Ed Ruth will be fighting in October. Lorenz Larkin versus Eric Silva is an alternate fight. So if any one of these guys goes down for any part of the tournament, whether it's the quarterfinals, the semifinals, the final, the winner of Larkin versus Eric Silva will step in and take that spot. Paul Daly versus Michael Page is a barn burner of a fight that millions of people have been asking for that fight. Yes, you heard that right. Millions of people. Two British MMA superstars. Daly, a longtime superstar. Page, a guy that's rising onto the scene, bursting onto the scene, has been trending on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, you name it. He's a hot name in the sport of MMA. Then you have Neiman Gracie and Ed Ruth. Neiman Gracie, yes, you guessed it, a member of the Gracie family. And Ed Ruth, one of the most prestigious Division I wrestlers in the NCAA of the last, 5-6 years. What he did at Penn State was phenomenal. Nothing short of phenomenal. And then you have, as I mentioned from the first part of the show, Rory McDonald, the champion of the division in the last quarterfinal fight, I'm assuming, versus John Fitch. So despite what happens with Rory and Gegard, Rory's got another fight right after. Whether it's right after or not remains to be seen. If Rory comes out of that fight a little dinged up, which I definitely think he will. He's Rory McDonald. When has he not been dinged up in a fight? The fight with John Fitch will probably happen later in the year. Maybe in the summer. Maybe in the fall. They probably wouldn't want him to take a full year off. Let's say the spring or summer. The spring or summer, we could expect that one. Lima, Koreshkov, Daly Page. Daly Page doesn't have a date. I know Neiman Gracie and Ed Ruth is coming before the end of the year. So we got Lima and Koreshkov, Gracie and Ruth before the end of the year. And then the other two fights, we don't have an official date on that yet. But nonetheless, Bellator is building their brand. They are putting their breadbasket into their eggs into the Grand Prix breadbasket, and they should, because they've done very well within that. They've sold tickets, they've generated hype around their brand due to the fact they've had these Grand Prix, and I love it, because that's true MMA. We talk about all the time amongst MMA fans, and I've talked about it on this podcast before, MMA matchmaking, it's brutal sometimes. What they do to these fighters, the positions they put them in, the fights that they give them, they're not justified at all. Sometimes the ranking system makes no sense in the UFC. Not sometimes, the majority of the time it makes no sense. So 100% of the time it makes no sense. You have Ronda Rousey, who's been inactive for quite a while, and I'm pretty sure she's still in the UFC rankings. She's in the WWE. I mean, I think it's fair we could take her out, but that's neither here nor there. Bellator says, well, we will make the matchups for the quarterfinal round, and then we'll let the fighters dictate who they fight. Whoever wins moves on to the next bracket. Whoever loses stays home. And I like that. I like the tournament. It makes sense. It's not a true, 1993 UFC one night, one winner tournament. It's laid out over the next, 6 to 10 months, and that's okay. Bellator's still not finished with the Bellator Heavyweight Grand Prix, but that's been a major success. And fighters that have lost have fought fights since, which is always cool. If a guy loses, they've made him stay active. He hasn't gone into exile or anything like that. Guys like Rampage, guys like Roy Nelson, who have lost their fights in the first round, have largely been active. We still got, 2 fights left, the semifinals, between Fedor and Chael. But I'm really going off topic here, and I apologize. I want to Matt Mitrione and Ryan Bader as well, but I really want to talk about the subject matter here, and I apologize that I kind of went off topic. Douglas Lima and Andrei Koreshkov. Koreshkov, former welterweight champion Bellator. Lima, former Bellator welterweight champion. And I think Lima does have the advantage, but Koreshkov is no joke. Leg kicks galore. I'm looking out for that. But I do think Lima learned a lot from his fight versus Rory McDonald. Going through a 5-round title fight like that, one that could have easily gone either way, one that leaned towards Rory, but Lima, I think, did make a grave mistake in the 5th round by not avoiding that takedown and just staying away from Rory and peppering Rory. Rory was on one leg, and Lima went toe-to-toe with him in that 5th round, which allowed Rory to shoot in and get that takedown. I think Lima made a huge mistake, and he could very well still be the champ had he not made that mistake. So I'm going to lean towards Lima in this fight, and moving on to the next round, the winner of that fight would fight the winner of Daly versus Page. So Lima versus the winner of Daly versus Page, that's a great fight as well because Lima has fought Paul Daly before. And if MVP Michael Venom Page takes on Douglas Lima, that's a barn burner for Bellator. So there you have it. I got Lima beating Koreshkov in the Bellator MMA ring, octagon, whatever you want to call it. And, it's a tough fight. It's a tough fight to talk about because I think both guys are very evenly matched, and the fact that it happened before between Douglas Lima and Andrei Koreshkov means quite a bit. Lima is 29-7, 5 losses by decision. He fought Andrei Koreshkov. I was right. He did knock out Andrei Koreshkov in the 3rd round at Bellator 164 in Tel Aviv, Israel. Then he beat Lorenz Larkin. Then he lost to Rory McDonald. When he beat Koreshkov, that's what actually helped him win the welterweight world championship. And since his fight versus Lima, Koreshkov has won versus Chita Nujquani and Vaso Bakosevic, both by knockout. August 25th of 2017, July 14th of 2018. Second fight being a first-round knockout. One thing to keep your eye out on is the kicks of Koreshkov, the real deal. He's got actually, this is the 3rd fight between Lima and Koreshkov. And the trilogy, it's a split right now. So this is the trilogy fight. Benson Henderson is a fight that Koreshkov took and won, and where he defended the Bellator welterweight championship. So Lima lost his title to Koreshkov. Then Lima regained the title from Koreshkov, and now here they meet in the first round of the Bellator Welterweight Grand Prix in the first matchup of the Bellator Welterweight Grand Prix. But I got Lima winning this one. I'm Ryan Thomas, everybody. That was the Thomas Take on Lima versus Koreshkov, the 3rd fight on the main card. Actually, the 2nd fight in the presentation will be the 2nd fight on the main card on Bellator 206. September 29th on DAZN. Take care.